Hey everyone, and welcome to the People's Health Alliance for the people, by the people, empowering people over their own health and well-being. My name's Shirley Blanch. I'm a mindfulness coach and meditation teacher, and I am joined today by leadership and business coach, the wonderful Amanda O'Rourke, who's going to be talking to us all about how we can use manifestation in our lives to improve them, to get the goals that we want to achieve, and she's going to be talking very interestingly about some of the neuroscience that's coming up behind that and how she's used it in her life to completely change the direction she was going in and being able to manifest what she wanted. So I think that's really brilliant. Amanda, welcome to the People's Health Alliance. It's great to have you here.
And it's wonderful to be here, Shirley.
So I always think it's really powerful when people share their own stories because we hear a lot, we see a lot of influencers out there telling us all the things that we need to be doing to manifest our dream life, but you don't really know what they're doing and you don't really know if they've managed to do it themselves. So what I think would be really great is if you can share with us about one, the sort of practices you've been using and the results that you've seen in your own life.
Well, that's a lot of questions.
It is.
So I think, firstly, I think what I've done over the years has kind of organically expanded and changed in certain directions. But I think the principles behind what I've done have always remained the same, and I've just not connected the dots until recently. And so it's interesting when I look at what I have brought forth into my life, because the one thing I'd like to say to everybody listening, everybody manifests. It's not like, it's not the domain of the elite few. We are all manifesting, but we're not necessarily aware of that. And therefore, it's the first step really is about raising your awareness of what it is that you want, but also what it is that you've already brought forth. And for me, I think the most powerful times is often when you're at the lowest points, because you suddenly think, oh, how did I get here? And this isn't what I want. And that allows you to then shift direction, shift your focus, if you can do that.
That's so interesting, isn't it? Because it kind of comes down to the sort of Abraham Hicks, you've got to know what you don't want to know what you do want,
Yes, yeah.
kind
And I
of
think
thing.
that's the issue, isn't it? Because we tend to focus on what we don't want, and we don't know that we're doing that. We're really sort of thinking, oh no, I want more money, or I want a better job, or I want to be more beautiful. Actually, what we're really talking about there is the lack of that. And that's what then is responding in what we see.
I love the point you make that we're all manifesting already,
Mm,
because I think that's so true. But a lot of the time we're manifesting things we don't want.
yeah,
That's the reality.
yeah, that is the truth. And I think it is about taking stock at the point where you want to start and try this, because from my experience, what I've done is little sort of experiments along the way, and I've always found that really useful. I read a beautiful book called E Squared years ago by Pam Grout, and she asked you to test the universe. Now, I'm going to be talking about neuroscience later, so there's the science behind it, but there's also what we would call the woo, and it really doesn't matter which you believe, because they both point to the same end. And so this book E Squared talked about testing the universe in, like, looking for something and asking the universe to show it you within 48 hours. Now, what we know in neuroscience is that there's a point in the brain called the reticular activating system, and that is very efficient at finding things and searching through things for you to see. So what I was actually doing when I thought I was doing sort of a very woo practice was actually I was activating a part of my brain that I was not aware of, that was going to act on my behalf to look for what it was that I wanted to see. And knowing that is really powerful, because it means that your focus is much better than you think it is. So, for instance, if I said to you, Shirley, look around the room and tell me 5 red things, you'd probably be able to do that, really, really quickly. But then if I immediately said, now 5 blue things, you might struggle because you've been focusing on the red.
Wow.
So, you really have to first and foremost think, where am I putting my focus? And if your life is telling you not in a good place because look at what the results are, then that's the time to maybe think about a shift.
I think that's there's so many great things to pick out of that. One, I think you're right about the focus. And I think we live in a world full of distractions and it gets
Mm,
harder and harder to focus because also with things like social media, we are encouraged to place our focus and attention on things that scare us and worry us and things that we wouldn't want to manifest in our lives because that takes more of our attention and our brains are sort of hardwired to look for threat. So I think being a lot more mindful and conscious of where we put our focus and attention is really, really important. I love what you said that we have this ability, but it can be hard to switch from one to the other. You know, if you're
yes.
focusing on one thing, just to be conscious that it might be harder to then focus on something else. And I think you're right. I think all the stuff that we've sort of put down to being a bit woo over the years is slowly the science is catching up with that. And it's going to show to us the science behind all the stuff that people have known for a really, really long time. What I'm interested with you is because I've known you for a long time and you've been a coach for a long time, and you are probably the most well-read person that I know around the subject of manifesting. But but you've said that it took you to get to a certain point where you really had to put it into practice. So sometimes maybe we're too comfortable in our lives to really have the motivation to get to that point where we really want to try it properly, because it makes me think of some of the people out there like Eckhart Tolle, like uh, Conversations with God. Can't remember his name now, but you know, those people who'd really kind of got to a low point in their life, who then sort of asked for help and asked for guidance, and then suddenly their lives sort of changed around. And I think that this is a story you hear time and time again. Peter Crone, you know, other people like that who've had these big
Mm.
changes in their lives. And so I think it's really interesting that you say that. So for you, who's been a coach for a really long time and read a lot, was there a disconnect, do you think, between having read a lot, knowing a lot from a maybe an academic perspective, and actually having the motivation and being able to put it into practice?
Absolutely. That's a great point to make. And I think the way I would express it now as a coach is there's a difference between theory and integration. So what I mean by that is I could read, and I have read like over 250 books on self-development, and in particular sort of about manifestation, but also about other subjects around leadership and so on. But actually, if I don't put what I learn in those books into practice, if I don't integrate them into my being, if I don't change the way I am behaving as a result of those books, I might as well have not read them. They're just words. It's just, and it's like with manifestation, if you're thinking about what it is that you want, if you don't take any action upon those wishes, that's all they are, wishes, you know. And I think that's the thing to think about is where am I putting my focus now? And what is it on? Is it on lack, or is it on, what we would call abundance? Is it on what's more for me? And what I think I struggled with when I started my coaching business was I was really out of my comfort zone in that I was actually now marketing myself. In my business before, I was marketing a service which wasn't really about me, it was about the people who were working for me. So I found that much easier to sell. But also there was the money side of it, which was really kind of really difficult for me to get my head around, that I was going to charge, quite a lot of money for people to work with me, and was I worth that? And it really kind of took me to another level of understanding of my own worth, if you like. Um, and so I think what you're saying about, you get to rock bottom, what I think I got to a point where I thought, am I really meant to be doing this? The money side of my business wasn't great. And I got to a point where it was just, if this is meant for me, if this is what I am meant to do, and I had so many signs along the way that this was what I was meant to do, then show me, like, give me the people that I need to help me, um, you know, have people show up for me that I need to, help my path along the way. And the strangest things started to happen. Opportunities started to come to me. Last year I was on a free masterclass for 3 days with a coach I'd worked with previously who was absolutely fabulous. And I went into that and she said, "Oh, I'm going to do a raffle at the end of this 3-day workshop, and one of the prizes is going to be 6 months working with me." Now, I knew that that program was going to be worth about 15 grand, and I thought that's just way out of my, sort of budget. But I also knew that I'd win it. had
Wow.
that feeling, and it's really, I bet a lot of listeners can resonate with this. That feeling that you just don't know where it's come from, but you just know. And irony of it is that that actual course was talking about how do you get into a place of certainty, of knowing that it's going to be okay, that things are going to work out. So when she pulled my name out of the hat, and it was, it just came up on the screen as Amanda O, I knew it. It was almost like I'd seen it before. And so when it comes to manifesting now, it's the joy is actually of, and it causes giggles for me sometimes. It's like you knew it was going to happen. It's almost like it was always meant to be. You were just meant to catch up in terms of your belief of it. And I think that's where a lot of people struggle. Is that, you said about how do you shift your focus when you've believed something for so long? I think we can sometimes get in our own way there because we can think, oh, I must be blocked. It must be an energy block, or I need to heal something around me because that must be what it is. And what you're doing is you're actually setting up a block in itself. That's a mental barrier that you've created. And if you can just let go of that almost, then things can actually come to you. And
Yeah, I love that. I think letting go is one of the hardest things
yes, it is.
because we instinctively want to try and control everything and we want to
Hmm.
try and control the outcome, and we don't have enough faith or trust in the process. And I think also as well, it's about tuning out of the voice in your head that's sort of the most dominant one,
Mm.
and listening to the one that's behind that, which is so much quieter and so much harder to
Well,
hear.
and I think the other thing that's interesting when you talk about the neuroscience of trying to like rewire your thinking, people talk about this all the time. It's like, how to rewire your brain and that. We often get caught in this conception that you have to unpack what has been wired for 50 odd years, whatever, however old you are, and then construct something new. But actually, what neuroscience tells us is we know we don't need to do that at all. We need to construct the new thing and let that become the dominant so that the actual old stuff drops away, because eventually it will, because we won't be paying any attention to it. We
Yeah,
won't give it our
definitely.
attention. We won't make it salient. We won't make it important.
It
So
doesn't exist anymore if we're not
no,
looking at it.
and that's it. And it is literally like, I remember Abraham Hicks used to talk about the fly in the pie. They used to say that there's a fly in the kitchen and you are so focused that it's going to land on your pie, then of course it does. And it is about, where are you putting your attention? That would be my first, sort of advice to anybody listening is, what are you fixating on? What are you obsessing about? And how could you use that energy better on something more constructive for yourself? And it is, you need to just build the awareness first and foremost. Start noticing it. Don't beat yourself up when you notice you're focusing on the bad stuff, because that's what I did when I started doing this. It's like, oh, I shouldn't be thinking that. I should be holier than thou and all of that. No, not at all. It's just about building that consciousness around what is it that I'm looking at right now and how am I seeing it?
So for you, you had all the theory,
Hmm.
um, you'd listened to a wide range of people. I'm assuming you'd tried sort of practical things, writing things,
Yep.
journaling, uh, doing other kinds of, I don't know what else you might have done, vision boards,
Affirmations,
affirmations.
all of that,
Do you think that the problem with some of that stuff is it's reinforcing your focus on what you don't have? Because what you're sort of, even though you have an optimism about what you might be able to have, it's sort of putting out the energy that, well, I'm excited about getting this, so therefore I don't already have it. And so even that sort of excitement that you can have about something that might be coming your way is on a sort of energetic level, sending the information out that I'm excited about getting something because I don't already have it. And
Yeah.
their part of it is, and so I wonder if when you get to a point where you feel sort of lower about things, you're like, well, I'm just going to give up now. If it doesn't work, I'm just going to give up. So you don't even really have that excitement anymore. It's just like, look, I'm just letting it all go now.
Mm.
So you're then not putting that energy out. Does that make sense?
It does, it's surrender. It's
Yeah.
absolutely surrender. It's just giving over to whatever power you might believe in, and letting them sort of, take the reins, if you will. I think, there's a great book called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer, and he talks about how he just went with the flow, really, literally. There were things that happened to him in his life, and I just thought, I'd never tolerate that, but he did. And it led him to being a multimillionaire. And he never even wanted that. That wasn't his ambition. So it's quite interesting and extraordinary if you lean into that process of letting go of things. And it's one of the things I say is really important, because we talk about vibrational energy and how you can go up the emotional scale. And often there's this pressure to feel a certain way in modern world. And I actually said, we've kind of got it backwards, because it's actually not about trying to raise ourselves up. If we could naturally let go of the things that are keeping us down, we would we would automatically elevate. We wouldn't need to try, it would just happen organically. So I think it is about, again, like you say, being aware of what is holding you back in terms of what is keeping you distracted, but also what you're focusing on in terms of what you haven't got. Um, I mean, that brings us to a great point as well, because for me, there's some really magic ingredients to the manifestation thing. And like you said, I did do all of those things that you listed, probably every single one of them, wish lists and all of that. And all of them can be successful on their own in sort of part. And I've had evidence of that. I had a screensaver on my computer of the ruins at Tulum in Mexico for a year, and I dreamt about going there. And I would, every morning I would put my computer on, and this beautiful screensaver would appear, and I'd just imagine I was there. And I think the difference that I noticed was the emotion that I felt when I looked at that picture. And this is, for
Mm.
me, if anybody takes nothing but this away from this podcast, this is the crucial thing, I think. You need energy in motion, emotion, to create those new neural pathways in your brain, to actually affect that sense of self, to affect who you think you are, to affect your habits and your behaviors, your thoughts and your actions. And you then become somebody different. And then whatever it is that you want seems to be easier to to be more in your grasp, if you like. And so to finish that story, within less than a year, I was on that beach in Tulum. And I'm not exaggerating when the whole family said afterwards, there was a kind of a moment where it was a pinch me moment. But for me, it was greater because I'd lived it so many times before in my head. And so I think that's the key for me is like it's attaching that emotion to it. You have to want it enough. But want is a dangerous word, because you said sometimes when you want something, it's actual evidence of an absence of it. So I prefer the word desire. That, sort of, wouldn't that be nice?
It is really fascinating, because there's I wonder as well if it's sort of almost like creating a future memory. So
Absolutely, it
you're
is. That's a
creating
beautiful way of saying
a
it.
future memory. And if you think about a memory, you don't think, oh, I wish I had that, because you've already had it. You've already
Absolutely.
experienced it. So if you're creating a future memory, then it's like you've already experienced it. So you don't have that desire for it because you feel like you've already had it. And I think that it's that subtlety, because I wonder if sometimes the language around manifestation, and maybe because it's sort of so much more in the mainstream now, I wonder if it kind of loses some of the subtleties that you need to be able to do it properly.
Yeah.
It's sort of very much the language that's used, very much like, go for it, get it, dynamic,
Mm,
all these sort of buzzwords, lists, and like you said, wish list, vision boards, this, that, and the other. It all feels very, very exciting, but it's those subtle changes in energy that are maybe missed with some of the sort of like little sound bites that we hear.
mm. That is so insightful, Shirley, because I've read that before, that it is about creating future memories, but I'd never thought of it in that context, that actually it's a memory, so it's already happened, so you already feel like it's already done, so there's no doubt, and that creates certainty. So it's amazing how kind of you've taken that and run with it. And I think it's so important when you look at this, that you really consider how much it means to you, but also to the wider populace as well. I think when it comes to manifestation, it doesn't just stop with you, it impacts other people as well. So it's about, I always I'm trying to come to a conclusion with the key ingredients with manifestation. And I think one of the things that I put is contribution, is how will this contribute to the betterment of the world? And I think when we're talking about service industry, when you're talking about people who are healers and therapists and that, we're doing that. And so there can be frustration when yeah, but it's not working. It doesn't feel like I'm making that impact. And I think what you just said really helps, I think, in terms of you, you can create future memories. You can actually create a belief that your business is really thriving because you have a belief in yourself, in what you're doing. And I think that is so powerful in itself.
I'm always really interested in seeing people who are sort of successful in different areas of life as well, because I think that you can get so much information from people who they don't question so much. They just know what it is that they want to do and they do it, and they're not doing it because they think it's going to be a route to earning money or fame or anything like that. Especially if you look at some musicians and you look at them and you think you would still be doing that if you were playing to one person in a pub
Mm,
somewhere,
mm,
because that's just what you want to do and you're driven to do that and to create. And there's a creation, isn't there? There's a creation element to this. You're creating your reality. So whatever your reality looks like, you've created it to where it is thus far,
mm.
and there has to be ownership over that. But also it there is an element of just like, well, this is what I'm doing, and it doesn't really matter how it appears from the outside. This is my path and I feel so connected to it, I couldn't imagine doing anything else. And I think with you that was probably the point that you were at, because you felt so much that coaching was for you,
Mm.
that it was so much, you couldn't really conceive of doing anything other than that, because that's where
No,
your passion was.
no.
And so when it wasn't working for you, you got to this point where you asked for help, which is quite
Yes,
hard to do as well. I
yes.
think when you're a coach or when you're somebody helping other people, you don't always ask for help yourself. And I've heard recently somebody else saying it's when you're manifesting, it's almost like you're working in partnership with the universe. You're
Mm.
not saying, I want you to do this for me. You're saying, let's do this together. And it's got a sort of different feeling to it.
And it's so interesting you say that as well, Shirley, because there's that feeling of separation that the universe and us is separate, but actually there's so much literature that suggests no, we're one and the same. We really have no conception of how powerful we are. And so there's a really brilliant book called Three Magic Words. And typically of me and my friend, we had this kind of running joke that we both got the book and I hadn't yet read it, which was unusual for me, I know. But also a believer that you read something at the right time. And anyway, these three magic words, and this might offend a few people, but apologies if it does. But the three magic words is I am God. And it's that powerful knowing that you are the creator of your world, and that is, you are not only in conjunction with the universe, but you are it. You are able to create from that I am sort of paradigm, if you like.
So when you kind of surrendered, you let go, you asked for the help,
Mm.
you got the coaching that
Yeah, the
you
coaching showed up really
the
quickly.
coaching showed up really quickly. Just because I'm just conscious of time, we haven't got that much longer left, and I really want to hear what happened.
Yeah.
So you got the coaching. What happened next? How did things escalate for you from that moment onwards? And how did it feel different to how it felt in the past?
I think that winning the coaching was really the kind of the pivotal point for me because I suddenly felt like everything was falling into place. I'd worked with this coach before, and when I'd worked with her before, things had really started to kind of ramp up for me in terms of my business, but then it had gone quiet again. So I knew there was something else that I maybe needed to work on. My husband actually, as an aside, had encouraged me to think about having a wait list. like a waiting list or being fully booked. He said play with those because they're less than, it's more fun to sort of have those words in your head than I just need more clients, which is very much more in the desperate sort of field. So I switched my intention from I just want more clients to I just want to coach every day. And that was kind of, it felt much more a peaceful an intention than, God, give me more clients. I'm desperate,
Yeah.
that sort of feeling. Um, and one of the things we did in an exercise in the coaching that I'd won was, what do you want more of in your life? And I just wrote straight away, I want more opportunities. I
Okay.
kid you not, the next day I get a phone call from somebody I'm working with as an associate, and she asked me if I wanted to be a lead coach on the program, the next program to launch. And I was like, well,
Wow.
I can't say no. It really frightened me to start with. I was like, oh, I don't know whether I can do that, and all the doubt. But I said, I've asked for it now. I need to honor that gift that's just been given to me. So I said yes. And I've been lead coach now for 4 programs, and I'm fully booked for the next sort of
Wow.
3 or 4 months. It's, until sort of October, I've got work that, it's really unbelievable. But yet it was kind of predictable from the process that I'd taken. And I know I'm conscious of time, but one of the things that I would like to just say to the listeners is that the key ingredients, I think, in this process are to be calm. And you sort of said, that gives you access to much more when you're calm, when you're in that sort of calm state. So you have to kind of find a way to calm your nervous system down, to you regulate yourself, though meditation, mindfulness, whatever works for you, and then get into that sort of that focus state of what it is do you want. And that might mean unpacking what you don't want, but it's actually about, okay, what do I want? And then finding some way to access that feeling state of having it already. Neville Goddard says, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Play with that feeling of, what would that be like? How nice would that be? And it's about then taking any inspired action that comes your way. When somebody offers you an opportunity, take it. You'll see them. They'll start to show up. They were always there, but you just didn't notice them because they weren't around your space. So it's about kind of really leaning into it rather than fearfully leaning away. Um, Gratitude. We haven't even talked about gratitude. That's massive as well. And it starts with being grateful from where you are right now, because there's always, always, always something to be grateful for, and that can be your launch pad.
And also that's then an acknowledgement. The gratitude's also an acknowledgement that you've created everything that you've got so far, whether you want it
Yes,
or not. But it's empowering, isn't it? Because if you've created what you've got so far, then you can change what you're going to get in the future.
yes.
So I think gratitude's really great. So for anybody listening now, because I know we have a lot of practitioners out there, and sometimes, people go into this work because they've got a big heart, they want to help other people, and that can sometimes be challenging. Like you said, you have to have this, you have to overcome any sort of negative self-doubt about yourself and your
Mm,
abilities and being able to charge for things, all that kind of stuff. And it can be a competitive world as well. So it can seem like it's difficult to get work.
mm.
And so for everybody listening out there, if you had to sum it up, just as we're sort of finishing now, from all your years of going from somebody who was maybe in that situation to where you are now, what advice would you give?
I think you said something earlier about trusting the process. I actually think it's about trusting yourself more, leaning into your belief about you're here to do this, and actually being able to articulate that in a way that is compelling, both for you and for whoever listens to you. Because I think we undersell ourselves. We're a nation, I think, in Britain where we don't speak um, much. We're not very good at hyping ourselves up. But actually, it's not about that. It's about building a belief system within yourself about just how amazing you are. My vision for my business is to help people see and share their own light, because we all have it. And I
Mm,
think the difficulty is that sometimes we don't want to show that light, and we don't want to be that person. But actually, you're meant to do it. If you're meant to be here, then why not? Give it a try. If it's, if this isn't working for you as you're doing it right now, then wouldn't it be wonderful if you could just shift gears and change?
And I'm interested to ask about that was all really great advice, by the way. It was that's wonderful. But I just wanted before we finish because you mentioned inspired action,
Yes.
and I'm wondering if sometimes we take action based on fear, but we
Mm,
feel that it's maybe inspired action towards our goals, but
yeah.
actually it's not inspired action. So could you just clarify what you mean by inspired action?
So for me, inspired action is when I get an impulse which feels good. So I would always say the distinction between what's being predicated by fear or by the opposite, which some people say is by love, inspiration, intuition, whatever. I think listen to your body and where are you feeling it in your body that you should do this? Because often fear comes from the same source in your body, and you'll know it'll be individual to individual people. Um, and I think, like I said, it's an impulse, but it doesn't mean you have to act impulsively. So sit with it and listen to your body, see how it makes you feel. Fear never shows up as a good feeling.
No.
And so, I think when I think about when I've taken steps, for instance, we manifested a win on a quiz show, me and my husband. Sort of we were lucky enough to do that. I did not want to do that when I first heard about it, but I lent into it because I knew that it would be good. So I think it is about having an idea of where you think it might lead you and following the breadcrumbs to it.
Mm.
It's a difficult process, and it's a very good question because it can be very misleading for people. They think they need to do certain things, but all I can say is the body never lies, so listen to it.
I think there's the fear that you have of sort of going into the unknown or stepping outside of your comfort zone,
Mm,
which it does have a fearful element to it, but it has a sort of almost a higher vibrational element to it, a
mm,
sort of excitement to it of what could potentially be the outcome
yes,
versus the fear of if I don't do this, I will lose something, or or taking action because of a feeling of lack or feeling like, well, this is the way it's always been done, and that's a sort of lower feeling. Well, I don't want to do this, but I should do it because
yes,
this is the way that I know other people have done it and it's worked for them. Maybe something like that.
yes. And I think that's shown up quite a lot on social media, hasn't it? Where people have like a cut and paste strategy. Just follow these rules and it'll work for you. And when it doesn't, you feel like a failure. But actually, I think, energetics tells us that it's not about what you're doing, it's who you're being.
Yeah.
And it's the being that is where you can, this is where the manifestation stuff can really affect that. It affects who you're being in the time. And you can do all you like and have no results at all. And I'm I'm good at evidence of that. But actually the being part is where the magic starts to happen. And that's when, you become interested in contribution. You become very grateful for what you've got and you take stock of what it is that you want and you really focus hard on what it is that you're trying to deliver.
I think those are some great tips to end on, Amanda. I could talk to you for hours, but we don't have that long, unfortunately. I'd love to chat more because you're so insightful, and maybe we'll speak again on this subject.
That would be
And
great.
if people want to feed back to us, if there's anything they wanted to know about a bit more, then maybe we could do another one of these, which would be really amazing. But if people want to find out more about you and what you do, I know you're booked up. You're fully booked at the moment,
I am.
but it's always great for people to be able to have access to more information. So if they do want to find out more about what you do, where can they find you?
So I post regularly on LinkedIn, so they can find me there. But also I have a website which is happycoach.co.uk. So you can come and find me there if you like.
And get happy, get happy with Amanda manifesting. So thank you so much, Amanda, for being with us today at the People's Health Alliance. Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you want to find out more about the PHA, go to their website, which is the-pha.org. You can go on there, you can find a list of practitioners, you can register as a practitioner, you can find community groups, but there's also a ton of resources on the website for everybody who wants to become more empowered over their own health and well-being and manifesting stuff for themselves as well. So thank you for your time today. Do take care. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.